big, strong, physical guys.
Skill, power, speed. They dominated games.
Flair is in. He scores! Oh, the Legion of Doom is weaving their magic tonight. Save made by Hextall.
Ultimate competitor. He chased people down.
He was mentally so focused on the game.
Everything that could go right went right.
Philadelphia Flyers have broken the National Hockey League record.
Dornhofer, but he's all alone as he comes back. Dornhofer.
They're scrapping, they're clawing, they're upstarts.
It didn't take a whole lot from anybody.
An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth.
Win today.
We will walk together forever.
The Philadelphia Flyers, one of the most storied teams in NHL history. And when I say storied, I mean storied. There aren't many franchises that can match the famous teams and the colorful characters that played here. And I don't think any franchise in the last 40 years has been as loved and hated as the Flyers. Loved by the legion of fans who bleed orange and black, and hated by, well, just about everybody else. Hi everyone, I'm Bill Clement. And many of Philadelphia's most cherished sports memories happen right here at the Spectrum. I have a little first-hand knowledge of that because I played here for 4 seasons. I was here when the Flyers transitioned from fledgling franchise to hockey superpower and captured the hearts of fans on Broad Street and beyond. The Original Six, a term well known to hockey historians. The Montreal Canadiens, Toronto Maple Leafs, Boston Bruins, New York Rangers, Detroit Red Wings, and Chicago Blackhawks all captured the attention of sports fans throughout North America.
Well, I was in the record business years ago. A friend of mine and I were having a drink in New York City, and he said, look, I got an extra ticket, to the Garden tonight. The Rangers are playing Montreal. And I said, what's that all about? And he said, well, it's the National Hockey League. Would you like to go with me? And I said, yeah, I'll go. I said, I didn't have anything else to do that night, so we went to the old Garden, and I fell in love with the game instantaneously. It was, without question, the greatest spectator sport I had ever seen.
The buildings were full, and they'd been full for years and years, and the competition in between the 6 teams was absolutely at its highest.
Riding that popularity, the time had come to enlarge the 6-team league.
I heard that the National Hockey League was expanding from 6 to 12 teams. I thought that it would be great to apply for a franchise.
Ed Snyder, who was working with the Philadelphia Eagles at the time, thought the city of brotherly love would fall for hockey just like he did. But other cities were applying, and Philadelphia's history in hockey was not good.
All the other applicants for the 6 franchises were from cities that had pretty successful minor league hockey operations for a number of years. Philadelphia was the only one that hadn't. They had 7 or 8 minor league teams that had failed. There had been one quickly aborted attempt in the 30s to have an NHL team. So there was no history of Philadelphia really being enamored with the sport at all.
However, Ed Snyder, along with Bill Putnam and others, persisted. And on February 9th, 1966, their hard work was rewarded.
This is the year of the great expansion. For the first time, the league will be composed of 12 teams.
Clarence Campbell presided as the teams entered the league. The Philadelphia Flyers, Minnesota North Stars, LA Kings, Pittsburgh Penguins, St. Louis Blues, and the California Seals.
The 6 new teams would play in one division. But before they took the ice, the Flyers had a lot to do.
One of the requirements for expansion was to have a building that would seat at least 12,000 people. So they built the Spectrum, and it was really the first modern arena of any kind in Philadelphia. And they built the building in a little more than a year, so that it was open in time.
But who would actually take the ice wearing the orange and black? That process was led by GM Bud Poyle and head coach Keith Allen.
We basically bought the Quebec Aces, and it gave us people like Andre Lacroix, Jean-Guy Gendron, and other players that were on our original team, and it helped us tremendously. And in addition to that, Keith Allen worked for a year prior to our starting date and scouted the 6 clubs that were then in existence, and we had, without question, the best expansion draft of any other team.
As far as the goalies were concerned, we thought they were the 2 best young goalies available, and fortunately we got both of them.
I have to admit, at the time I was disappointed.
Joe was probably the loudest guy in the National Hockey League.
Oh boy, that was depression for a while.
Ed Van Emden played with Chicago and was a hard-hitting, rugged defenseman. Unfortunately, I wound up in Philadelphia, and Gary Dornhofer was all-out 100% of every game. He gave everything he had every game.
I was probably like the other guys, I had to look on the map, where the heck was this Philadelphia?
I was the second player taken by Philadelphia, and I was working for the public works department in British Columbia, and I was flagging people by, I was a flag man, and this person got by and says, "I hear you just got drafted." And the guy said, "What do you mean drafted? You get drafted by Philadelphia." I said, "What?" I went to my boss. I said, "Oh God, I got to take the rest of the day off. This is very depressing for me because I thought I had a good year in Boston, and I played with Orr, and to go to an expansion team, it was very difficult for me."
My first exposure to Philadelphia was at an Eagles football game, and they introduced a guy on the starting defensive team. I swear to God, all 50,000 stood up and booed. And I said to the people that were there with us, "What in God's name did this guy do last week to deserve it?" And apparently he had a bad game, and I thought to myself, "Oh my God, what are we getting ourselves into here?"
Perhaps the toughest task facing the new franchise would be winning over the Philly sports fan.
Philadelphia, wasn't really a great hockey town when we first arrived there, and it took a lot of work by Ed Snyder and the rest of his staff to try to get people out there.
When we were brand new and we were ready to play our first game in a few days, the city said, "Well, we'll have a parade for you, and we'll start at City Hall, and we'll go down Broad Street all the way to the Spectrum." And we said, "Fantastic."
And the advanced publicity was the Iceman coming, and they had all the players in convertibles, and we were downtown at noon hour.
We paraded down Broad Street, to the Spectrum, but there was one issue. Nobody came.
There were more people in the parade than were watching the parade.
People were looking, they were wondering, who the heck are those guys?
And I said to myself, God, I don't know if we're going to last here very long in Philadelphia.
The team's first game was on the road in Oakland on October the 11th, 1967, where they suffered a 5-1 loss. But it was the home opener that was on everyone's mind.
We played Pittsburgh, and I remember we had about 7,600 people at the game. The president, Clarence Campbell, was there to drop the puck. And I remember there was a guy named Bill Sullivan, and he was an older guy, and he had come from the Quebec Aces. He scored the winning goal in the game. We won 1-0. And I remember he almost didn't get in the building. The guard didn't think he was a hockey player. He looked too old to be a hockey player.
The Flyers went unrecognized at first.
It was interesting when we started here. I was able to get a lot of tickets, and spread them around to people that I got to know, especially golf professionals. So I kept them supplied in tickets.
If you have a good crowd behind you, it will help you perform better. And that was the part that was a little bit difficult at the beginning.
But the Flyers did perform well, and soon enough the fans were filling the Spectrum.
We got a pair of tickets, went to the game, and really enjoyed it. And we ended up buying season tickets. Now, a season ticket in those days was less than $100.
When it took off is we played back-to-back games in November against Chicago and Toronto. And both of those games were sold out, and I realized hockey was going to take off in Philadelphia.
But just as momentum was building, Mother Nature had a surprise in store.
There was a bad storm came through in February, and we lost part of our roof.
The workmen went ahead, patching the 150 by 50-foot wide opening with fiberboard and tar paper. But while they were busy trying to restore the roof to its original state, a lot of people, including city officials, looked at the chunks of roofing scattered all over the grounds and parking lot and began to wonder whether the roof could really be considered safe at all.
We didn't expect we'd be playing on the road because of the roof falling off.
The last 29 games, we were like vagabonds. We played all over the country in various rinks.
Our home games were played in Canada, and I think we played one in Madison Square Garden, Quebec City, and Toronto. So it was just another road trip.
Despite the difficult circumstances, the Flyers went on to claim first place in their division. A 7-game playoff battle with the St. Louis Blues ensued, and though they lost that series, their first year was anything but a failure.
We hung in there and ended up in first place, and we were getting some real good crowds, and so it was a pretty good, successful first year, I think.
However, it would be the Flyers' second season that forever changed the franchise, when they found themselves facing the St. Louis Blues again come playoff time.
The St. Louis Blues, basically, they were a big physical team, and they would intimidate a lot of teams, and I would have to say that we were one of them.
They kicked the hell out of us in the playoffs. They just manhandled us.
When they swept us, I remember our owner, Ed Snyder, saying this will never happen again to us.
They had a great vision, and the vision was to structure the team so it wouldn't happen again.
One thing the Philadelphia Flyers were going to be known for is that no one was going to outmuscle us, beat us up, or be tougher than we were.
A few months later came the first step in changing the face of the team.
We drafted Bobby Clark, and that was really the turning point for our franchise. I was at the draft table, and it was a very interesting draft.
He slipped to us in the second round, and we couldn't believe it, and we took him, and I can remember after we took him, Jimmy Skinner come up to me and says, look, we'll give you 3 or 4 players for him, and Bud Boyle said, no way.
As soon as he arrived, you could see that he was the real deal. And every year he was getting better and better. And about the same time, we had Bill Barber and Jimmy Watson and Tom Bladen. And there was a big trade where we got Lonsbury and where we got Flett. And there was a lot of moves in a short period of time that added talent and also added a lot of toughness.
Don Selesky, Andre Dupont, and Bob Kelly were all part of Philadelphia's new rugged style, but it was the fists of Dave Schultz that changed the Flyers forever.
When he came up to us, he was a tough, big guy, and he loved to fight, and he took that role very quickly.
He was fearless, and the players get nicknames pretty quickly, and his nickname was the Hammer.
When you're challenged in any way, everyone can see what might be going on, and whether someone's trying to intimidate you or whatever, you've got to respond.
Schultz brought the Flyers the start of a physical presence that helped make us successful, I think.
Schultz is on him, wrestles him down.
Then a few other guys would join in, and it would be like a little brawl.
Oh, and this crowd is in an uproar now.
During the 72-73 season where they really got physical, and there was a road trip where they got involved with a big brawl, and then the next night they won the game just being physical and being dominant. And it was basically Jack Chevalier who was writing the story, and Pete Cafone was the headline writer. And they actually came up with Broad Street Bullies. It was used in a headline, and it just stuck.
At the time we were going through it, we never viewed ourselves as bullies or as a team that was out to intimidate other teams. It just sort of happened. The camaraderie that grew amongst the players and the way that we came together just evolved, and it evolved quickly.